Environmental Defence Fund and CNBC TV18 present Climate Tech Convening India 2025 in association with Climate Collective.
Topic for our panel is decarbonizing industry strategies for a sustainable future. And Prabodha, I'll come to you first. Of course, JSW, massive company, JSW Steel announced plans to invest $1 billion across its operations to cut carbon emissions and have some ambitious targets there as well. Dial back a little bit. Tell me, what are the priorities that you have set, the company has set for decarbonizing?
See, our strategy is very simple. How do we balance economic growth with decarbonization? So that is the main strategy that we are following. And to achieve those strategy, and we have set ourselves targets. The targets is very simple. We have two phases with two milestones. The first phase is 2030. That's where we have set ourselves to reduce our emission by 42%. And the second is 2050. That's where we want to achieve net neutrality in carbon emissions. So having set our strategy and target, obviously the next important question which you asked me, that what we are trying to prioritize to achieve that. So that is, the essential part is that if you look at the first part, 2030, there we have identified initiatives, those are financially viable to decarbonize. So we have estimated by 2030, we want to eliminate thermal coal use for our steel operations. That means we require almost 10 gigawatt of renewable energy. That's what our focus is. And we have made a significant progress. Our board has already approved 2.5 gigawatt of energy, renewable energy. And you would have seen today in the Times of India, the news has come, our chairman has already given a statement that he intends to invest almost $30 billion in renewable energy and associated energies. So that's going to significantly reduce our emissions.
Follow-up question to everything that you've said. So maybe you can take that now, Prabodha, because you've, of course, set very ambitious targets and you have the investments to back it. Tell me just quickly, you mentioned a mindset change, right? What are the challenges to managing and matching your decarbonization goals to, the set speed of growth?
The first mindset change is that I think I'm in the sustainability field. We need to speak the language of the functions that we are dealing with. And that's changed the mindset of the people. Because usually a person who is responsible for maintenance or the productions, he will love to hear those languages. Let me give one example here. We have the largest steel plant operating in Vijayanagar. And when I was talking to the head of the function that we call site president, I told, do you know, if you can use all the waste temperature which is going from 100 to 300 degrees centigrade, you can save 1 crore a day, that is around 365 to 400 crore a year. You say, wow, that's the saving. So that means the operation loves to understand how we can improve on processes and become more productive and save money. So the first,
speak the language, put it in context,
yes.
Absolutely.
So speak the language what your different customer can understand. So that is the biggest challenge in mindset change. Second is that people have to understand how it is going to impact their day-to-day activities. So that relates. So if you can make those changes, and obviously you require initial pressure, like we have hired a specialist organization to help us to make those changes. To workshop, we have created beautiful climate action center in every operations. So people come, see the pictures, discuss, brainstorm. They find, oh, this is my idea. So they get an idea, then we reward them. So they get, they get enthused to do more and more. Right. So that helps them to drive. So those kind of subtle changes we can do. I think lot of low-hanging fruits we can really realize by doing those subtle changes and the way we do things.
Absolutely.
Instead of talking, we need big investment and big breakthrough technologies, which is going to take time. I'm not telling we should not do that, because that's horizon scanning we need to do. We need to identify those technology which can make substantial changes going forward, and those will be financially viable going forward. At the moment, they are not, but we must invest in those things, because what we are doing today that can take us to a certain level, like we have said 42% reduction I can achieve by doing all these things.
Right.
But 100% reductions, I need those disruptive technology, and there we need to invest.
Mithika, let me come to you, given that today's theme, of course, is climate tech. Where do you source climate tech? And we spoke a lot about investment in R&D. So tell me a little bit about the strategies when it comes to investment in R&D, and where are you sourcing your climate tech?
It's a wide range of technologies that you need to consider, right? So while energy efficiency technologies are in-house, usually it's something that your teams have the capabilities to develop themselves and collaborate with the right academia partners, right collaborators, right technology partners to sort of implement. What's exciting in this space is, what about the new age technologies? What's next, right? What's our opportunity? What is the new energy growth story? And I think that's the essential piece of the puzzle when it comes to research. Where we source this from, or how we are looking at it is, we have, of course, incredibly talented and capable technology and carbon abatement teams. Kudos to them. I think their brain functions on a whole other level. So that's great. But I think what they've cracked beautifully is a balance between strategic partnerships and acquisitions, partnering with the right stakeholders in academia that are looking at proof of concept and implementation in the near term and scaling it up to the right credible levels, and the right balance with in-house research technologies. So utilization can only happen with the right researchers in-house. You need the right engineers and scientists to be able to understand what streams can be used when, because they understand your refineries, your steel plants, your manufacturing locations the best, right? So I think there's a very fine balance between the three, and that's just an example from a research strategic partnership and acquisition point of view. REC is already established in the photovoltaic space. One of the largest providers for PVs in the US already have a plant in Singapore. We are partnering with them and acquired them to be able to source that, and not just from Singapore, but actually build that in Jamnagar, right? To have that be in-house, to have that be made in India, such that it's catering to the efficiency requirements of India, to the climate needs of India, such that it's not just an external technology that you're bringing in, which is also a very good model. But in this context, when you have the capability to do so in the Indian context, it's best if it's made in here.
Derek, we spoke about, of course, economic growth, and I want to ask you, how do you balance the unprecedented demand for additional infrastructure, we see it everywhere, with the necessity to build it sustainably?
If I look at it from my organization L&T's perspective, we look at it in two views. One is our own sustainability goals and requirements which we need to do, because we are largely an EPC project and a manufacturing company. So what are we trying to do in terms of meet our requirements? On the other hand, obviously we are into projects, and we build projects for the country, we build large projects for India, and how do we inculcate and bring all those sustainability measures and ensure that it gets incorporated. So if I look at it, it starts with engineering. Because, I don't want to jump to what are we doing. It's engineering. We are a large engine company. We have more than 40,000 people across our various entities who are into engineering. And we make sure that our choice of materials, because we are conscious of it, that during execution, what will be the material used? We ensure that those get embedded into the design. Obviously, because of these cement and the type of, even the buildings that we do, whether the LEED or the green buildings, how are we incorporating, making sure that once we go through the entire phasing of the engineering to execution to commissioning, that the entire sustainability is captured. So number one. So we need to make sure that we have to do this. Number two is obviously we need to take care of the flora and fauna also. I don't know, many people do not know that manner in which L&T actually designs and incorporates. See, in Indergarh in Rajasthan, we have done an 11-kilometer, 8-lane expressway where for a sizable portion, it's elevated. You know why? For the animals to cross below. In India, the whole 8-lane expressway is elevated to allow this. I don't know, this bridge that we built, flamingos, pink flamingos, we were so conscious that we never wanted to disturb the biodiversity over here. We used very specific drilling, reverse drilling, because the reverse drilling avoids too much of disturbance to the flamingos. And there are examples and examples I can keep telling you there. So I think it's engineering, use of materials, and all of these that keep getting, incorporated into our execution, which allows us, to your question, while the large subject of, the project, because the size of the projects keep getting bigger and bigger, we need to be, 2 steps ahead of it. So I think this is the way we believe. We are a large engineering and manufacturing and project company, and we make sure that we incorporate all these into our design and execution.
Mirik, let me ask you this. Of course, you've heard from, large players here and the way they go about building for the future and sustainably. Tell me, in your view, how can we ensure self-reliant growth in climate technology?
World of climate tech is basically quite complex, and in terms of the solution landscape, and as was mentioned, there are some solutions which are here and now. There are some solutions which are down the line. In some cases where, say, here and now solutions, if you look at the global trends, I think China is pretty much dominating on the module. Obviously, folks here also are coming up, but they are sort of, I would say, much ahead. And there's a catch-up to be done in terms of the self-reliance part of things. That's why when you think about self-reliance, the leapfrogging angle is very, very important. How do you look at the next generation technologies from an innovation perspective? So in the here and now, we need to obviously collaborate. We need to look at building our own capacities, but a lot of them will be still driven by global supply chains. But there is a genuine opportunity in terms of the next generation of technologies where if we invest right now in the right building blocks in terms of R&D, in terms of technology and scale up, we can do quite a lot.
Godrej, of course, legacy organization. Give me a little bit of an insight into some of the best practices there.
We keep talking about profitability cannot be sacrificed for the sake of the environment, fair. But how much is enough? I mean, what can 1,000 crores buy you that 900 crores can't? So I think that kind of thinking percolating from the top really changes an organization's shift. And that's why we've been able to do it. We've been blessed, thankfully, with promoters who have a very strong view on these things and who are also very technically and commercially, they have the acumen to really make those decisions. And I think that's really what's percolated through the organization, enabled us to really take decisions which even within the organization, there was a thought that we couldn't do this. Mm-hmm. Just to give you an example, 2011, when the Good and Green journey at Godrej was set up, we had a very measly target of 30% renewables by 2020. And even that 30% was after a year of arguments with every single manufacturing guy saying that, no, it cannot be achieved. But sometimes driving that top down meant that the 30% target eventually led to an achievement of 50%. And today we're almost 80% renewables as a group.
But thank you so much to all my panelists for sharing your invaluable insights. It was a pleasure chatting with you all.
Again, a very warm welcome to all our panelists. If I may start with you, Anjali. How much capital do we need if we have to achieve our 2017 goal of being net zero?
A lot of it.
Do you want to put a number to it?
I will try. And if you go around, I call it the circular economy of data and numbers in climate right now, because all of us quote various numbers and they tend to go around in circles. The prevalent number for India is about $10 trillion or more to hit our net zero target by 2070. The practitioner belief is it will require, this $10 trillion will have to be significantly front-loaded. So it's not a straight line from here to 2070, but it's really $10 trillion over the next 10 years. So that's the quantum of capital, additional capital that is required in this space.
And Vivek, so far, what is the kind of funding do we see on an annual basis? Say last year, the year prior.
Thanks. I think what we've seen is upwards of $1 billion at least, but we, still have huge number of gaps, as Anjali mentioned. I think very quickly, just to understand, what exactly qualifies as climate finance, right? We need to also look at the taxonomy or the nomenclature, right? If you replace a solar pump or a rooftop, is the entire system qualified as green finance versus just that device? Or, so that's why we see a lot of variations and huge differences in the kind of number predictions and what qualifies as climate finance versus not, but yeah.
So what we need is $10 trillion by 2070. And what we are seeing so far, the current state of climate financing is $1 billion?
We might get to 6, but we'll still have that 3.5 gap eventually by 2070.
Okay. So, Anita, we're talking about a potential shortfall of $3.5 trillion. That's the number. How do we get that? What is needed? What are the new sources of funding required to get there?
So I think one point I'd like to make is not just the amounts, which, as Anjali said, is huge. It's also the urgency and the time frame. So from that perspective, I would say we need to get funding from all sources, both global as well as domestic. And one of the things that I would love to talk more about is how can we mobilize domestic capital towards climate change. We are seeing a little bit of it in the listed markets, but we need to see a lot more given the magnitude.
So we need to front load our investments, and we need a wide sources of capital. Mahua, hi, and thank you for joining in. So far, right, what it appears is that we have funding at the very early stage, at the nascent stage. I think Anjali calls it the lab stage funding, right? But thereafter, in the value chain of a company, the funding keeps dwindling. So come in on this. How do we ensure that companies get funded, not just when they're ideating, but as they grow and mature?
Thank you for having me. And it's great that you're doing an event on climate. Let me just say that the fundamental assumption has to be that whatever you're doing must make economic sense, must make commercial sense. There was a time 15, 20 years ago where all of this used to sit in the sustainability people. Nothing wrong with that. It would sit in the CSR discussions. We're well past that. The only way to get scale is to make it commercially viable. And if it's not, then quite honestly, I don't think any of us will also do anything. As consumers, as customers, as buyers, as sellers, as investors, as anything. So pure economics, the market moves towards incentives. That's just basic economics. Basic math, the market moves towards competition. And then, of course, you have structures and so on. So to your question, how does the money go beyond the lab stage? If you design to make something commercially viable, structure it, of course, properly, but it fundamentally must be a money-making proposition or a savings proposition.
You cut checks of $1 to $5 million for many of the companies?
For
Vana Capital?
Sure. From our early stage fund, we do first checks of $1 to $5 million. We do pre-Series A, Series A. So it's that very early lab scale. So we go TRL 5+. So when a technology is ready to come out of the lab and scale commercially. But going back to why money comes where it comes. The function of capital and commercial capital is to generate a return. And when there is a returns opportunity, there will be no dearth of capital flowing in. So when we talk about this funding gap, why is there a funding gap? Because there is some proof of concept that is required, and that may require investment that is not immediately marketable. The first cycle of, and I call it quote unquote clean tech because there's clean tech and clean tech. The first cycle of clean tech was not as successful because perhaps our technologies were not at a level where they were cost competitive. And markets were not ready. Today, that is not the case. Our technologies are very cost competitive and markets are ready. Markets are actually looking for solutions. If you heard from all the industry experts in the morning, every single large corporate is looking to decarbonize. The economy is looking to decarbonize. Hence, what we really need is innovation financing that takes enterprises, so not the technology or the product, but the business and the enterprise from lab to full-scale commercialization. So it's in venture world, it's Series A, Series B, etc., but really it is scaling capital, and that requires the full stack. So it requires equity, it requires debt at affordable rates so that these companies can be funded, MSMEs can be funded. India is beautifully positioned because we are able to produce new novel technologies and not just product. We heard from a number of startups that are actually doing patented products, so new polymers, new materials, but also process innovation. So both product innovation, process innovation at a cost that is affordable and accessible in the Indian context. And if it is affordable in the Indian context, in our very complex market, then it is affordable and viable across at least the global south and maybe even the global north. So, the whole context of technology transfer takes a different meaning.
And I love the fact that this topic brings in more women than men. So we're going to save the last word for Vivek.
Thank you. I'll also have a very quickly different take on a question that you asked, Anita. Do we need more generalist investors to come in? The question that we should ask is not about how do we increase climate finance, but how do we really think of whether all investment or all financing is green or climate? Because to me, climate is driving the biggest capital reallocation in history. And every financing will be green, whether you like it or not. And you will have to either look at the cost of inaction, look at the risk, or you will profit from it. So,
thank you. This has been a very great, insightful conversation. So thank you.
Environmental Defense Fund and CNBC TV 18 present Climate Tech Convening India 2025 in association with Climate Collective.